Armenians today commemorate 100 years since what is referred to as Red Sunday, a day where supposedly 250 Armenian intellectuals and leading scholars were gathered, gradually deported, and later said to be assassinated by the Ottoman Empire, presently known as Turkey. Historians estimate that up to 1.5 million Armenians were killed by Ottoman Turks, an event called a genocide by many scholars, viewed as the first genocide of the 20th century. Now, Turkey denies that the deaths constituted genocide, saying the toll has been exaggerated and that those killed were victims of war and unrest. Here to discuss this further is Dr. Arda Arsenian Ekmekji, the Dean of Arts and Sciences at Haigazian University in Beirut and Professor of Intercultural Studies. Welcome, Dr. Arda.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. So, as my colleague said, U.S. President Barack Obama did not use the word genocide for a 7th year to mark the anniversary, something Armenia's president, Serge Sarkisian, said was just to avoid angering Turkey, which is an ally. So, what are the Armenians demanding today?
Well, do you want me to react to Obama's statement? First of all, I'm not surprised. I'm sad. I'm disappointed, but I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised because apparently his history book is earlier than 1944. The term genocide was coined by Lemkin in 1944. So when the Armenians were going through genocide, they weren't actually knowing what they're going through as far as the name or the word is concerned, but they still went through the same things. They were massacred. I think Armenians, what they want today is to have a recognition of what happened, because denial of genocide is the last stage of genocide. You rob the victim from his suffering and his grieving, and you don't let the festering wound close. You need to have a closure for what happened. You have to remember that the 1.5 million people who perished have no graves. And April 24 is a commemoration for these people so that they will have some kind of a final rest. Now, when you come and tell these people did not die or nothing like this happened, and they are victims of First World War, they should have died in Turkey and not died in Deir Zor or in the Syrian desert. What were they doing deported somewhere miles away from their original homes? They didn't die on the fronts. So there is a kind of a denial and a kind of a hypocrisy about the whole event, which is very, very hard for the Armenians to accept, because no matter what you tell them, every family has a story of somebody who has died. And no matter how you describe it, this will not bring back the victims. And so, yes.
Interestingly, you mentioned Deir Zor in the Syrian desert. You know, the foreign minister, Gebran Bassil, said, and I quote, he released a statement before his departure to Armenia. He said there was a terrifying parallel between the criminal logic that led to the genocide of the Armenian people and recent crimes committed by terrorist groups like ISIS and the Nusra Front, which are also happening in Syria today.
I think the most painful thing for the Armenians today is the fact that if they can't be in the memorial service in Armenia, they should have been in Deir Zor. This is where, for us, the pilgrimage to Deir Zor is a kind of a commemoration of all these people who had died. Not to be able to be there today and to have the genocide museum and the church which was done in memory of all these people who were in Syria, completely blown up, is throwing us back to 1915. And to see what is happening in the area now, exactly the same, with hordes of people leaving their houses overnight.
Women being raped.
Women being raped.
Right.
I mean, I look into my grandfather's memoirs, who was a genocide survivor, and it looks like reading the newspaper clips of every day. If after 100 years we're going to repeat the same things, then reason is more important to call this genocide and have people deal with it. You know, in 1939, when Hitler occupied Poland, he said, who remembers the Armenians today? I can get away with it. And if people can get away with holocausts and massacres, then this is an open invitation. You come and do whatever you want. There is no tribunal, there is no justice, there's no judgment at Nuremberg. You can do anything you want, and people can get away with it. This is where it is becoming alarming to think of a country like the United States who denies that, an advocate of freedom and justice and human rights and so forth.
Ankara recalled its ambassador from the Vatican after the Pope actually admitted that this was, he didn't admit it, he actually said this was the first genocide of the 20th century. Germany just became the 25th country to recognize it on Monday. Do you think as time goes on and more countries recognize it, do you think that the Armenian lobby is doing a good job in really trying to remind people that this is there and it's getting stronger and stronger?
I think, you know, for the international community who refuses to acknowledge it, it's a race against time now. Because the first 50 years, the Armenian survivors did not speak. They went into silence and numbness to heal. They could not face, so they didn't speak a lot in the first 50 years. In the next 50 years, which came, the following 50 years, it was like a kind of a wake-up call, you know. And then all the memoirs started coming out. All the books have been written. And now what is happening, which is more than the Armenians, it's what's happening in Turkey. I think what is happening in Turkey cannot be denied. Every other Turk who has Armenian origins now is openly declaring it. They're just writing. Fethiye Çetin writes about her grandmother. She says, my grandmother was a Turk. The other one writes about what's happening in Diyarbakir. The third one writes about the Kurds who had, adopted Armenian children. So I think Turkey is going to face a bigger problem than the Armenians. It's going to face its own people.
Right.
Because it has been denying its own people the right to read their own history.
Right.
And now they're going to wake up and say, enough is enough, you know. Yeah.
You say a lot of this has to do with the Armenian diaspora that's been a little bit scattered all around the world. There's a very important Armenian community in Lebanon, which is extremely important. Today it has created churches, universities, schools. So how do you feel, you know, you're Armenian Lebanese as well, are you?
Yes.
So how do you feel about the Armenian community in Lebanon, bringing it back to home?
I think the Armenian community in Lebanon is a very vibrant community. And what is great about the Armenians is wherever they are good citizens. They are good citizens of the country which has hosted them. And now eventually we're all citizens as equal as to all others, right. You know. We have been through the war exactly like our neighbors. We have received the same bombs. We have been through the same problems. But we never fought against each other. I mean, we never really took an active role in destruction. We always have been on the construction part. I think that the Armenians in Lebanon have a lot of common things with the Lebanese non-Armenians, in the sense that we have faced the same tragedies, but what we need to do is to be able to reconcile with our past so that we can go on with our future. You know, many Lebanese tell me, enough is enough, 100 years, come on, turn the page and go on. And I say, if we want to turn the page, we have first to read the page. If you don't read the page, whether you're Armenian or you're Lebanese, of your past, and you face the demons which are inside or the skeletons which are in the closets, you cannot move forward. And this is what Turkey needs to do. Turkey needs to face its own past. And the Armenians have to heal with their own past so that both of us, we can move forward.
So that there could be a brighter future
there could be a brighter
for
future.
the Armenians and everybody. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank
that
you.
was Dr. Arda Ekmekji talking about the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. Back to